Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans. And my God, haven't the past 36 to 48 hours been an absolute whirlwind for a game that was labelled a snooze fest at the start of the week, has turned into a very, very highly anticipated clash. North Melbourne take on Essendon at Marvel Stadium tonight, Thursday night football kicking off at 7:30. There is so much to unpack. I've got serious whiplash from all of the events over the past couple of days. All I needed was to debrief every single bit of information with a friend of mine. I called upon Brad Klibansky. He was in the media for 20 years and is now the executive producer of the Shane, Crawford and Buddy Franklin show. We'll get to that chat in just a minute. But there is a lot to unpack and to summarise. We've got Paul Curtis, a 3-match suspension has been upheld and not challenged by North Melbourne. We've got Kane blacklisted from the North Melbourne Football Club after comments that he has made towards young gun Harry Sheezel. This is apparently the tip of the iceberg of over 2.5 years of relentless bullying. We've got George Wardlaw, who has a corky and will miss tonight's game against Essendon, and we have a debutant. We've got Finnbar Maley, the big moose, is set to make his AFL debut. He's the next cab off the rank at North Melbourne, plus team changes, all of that and more. Let's get to this chat with Brad. Let's wrap up the news from today and let's look ahead to a mouth-watering clash at Marvel Stadium this evening. It's been a massive 24 hours at Arden Street, and I just needed to phone a friend to debrief. And who better than one of my best friends, Brad Klibansky, executive producer of the Shane and Buddy show, which we'll get to in a second. Also, a very integral member of the Hawks Insiders podcast and team, and also a part-time North Melbourne supporter. Brad, welcome back to Kanga TV.
Mans, great to be with you. And what a massive day for the North Melbourne faithful, a roller coaster of emotions for everyone involved. I've been riding it as well. You know, North is my second team.
Yeah.
I love North Melbourne as well. You know, Hawks are obviously my number one, in a massive week for the Hawks this week. But we're not going to touch on the Hawks. It's all about the shin boners today. Where do you want to start, Mans?
Hey, do you know what? Let's start off on a positive note before we dive into all the North Melbourne chaos. Congratulations on the Shane and Buddy show. It launched a couple of weeks ago. You're obviously the producer. I'm so proud of you as your friend and as somebody who has really admired both Shane Crawford and Buddy from afar over decades, both on the field and off the field. I think this is such an incredible duo and two footy minds that we're so lucky to really get a deeper look into. How has the experience been for you? For those of you out there who don't know about it, just give the viewers a little bit of a bit of an insight into the world of Shane Crawford and Buddy Franklin.
Thanks, Mans. Very kind of you. I've been very lucky over my years. You know, I've been working in the footy media for close to 20 years now. Croft's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. I worked with him 10, 15 years ago. And this just started as an idea. We were just, catching up one day a few months ago. And he said he was looking to do a footy podcast and would I be interested in joining forces with him? I said, absolutely. And one thing led to another. I was up on the Gold Coast. Crawford and his family live up there. And we went to catch up for Buddy one morning for breakfast, which was unbelievable for me being a Hawthorn supporter. And Buddy Franklin was one of my favourite players. He's the best, footballer that I've seen play in my time. Spent a lot of time with Buddy and his beautiful family and got to know them. And Crawford and I just pitched the idea about doing a footy podcast. And fast forward a few months, we launched a few weeks ago, which has been fantastic. Thanks to everyone that subscribed. Please do so. YouTube, Spotify, all your podcast channels. But Buddy is someone who we didn't hear a lot when he played footy. We know how good he was on field, but give it a go because when you listen to what Buddy has to say, he knows his footy. He watches just about every game. Crawf loves it still. They're both great footy minds. And this podcast is, I guess, a lot for the players and the coaches, as you know, Mans, which we're going to touch on. Unfortunately, we live in the world of clickbait media these days, and there's a lot of negative, I guess, media that goes around. So the podcast, the guys do offer, I guess we call it positive criticisms at times. They do give their opinions, but it's predominantly a positive podcast. But yeah, I know you are tuned in and, Buddy is brilliant. So please, everyone out there, all your Kanga TV subscribers and those footy fans out there, give it a crack. It's not just Hawthorn and Sydney, because we know, Buddy played for both clubs, Crawford played for Hawthorn. We focus and touch on all the teams in the AFL, and, we discuss all of the issues. So, yeah, very privileged to work with two of the best we've ever seen play. But they're also great people, wonderful people, both have amazing families. So it's great to be working with those two on a weekly basis.
It's awesome. I've shared a few snippets, North related snippets on Kanga TV across socials as well. But definitely jump onto YouTube. You can see the great setup you've got there on the Gold Coast. And I know that I look forward to listening every single week. And I'm sure that everyone at home does as well. Speaking of another friend of yours in the media, actually a friend of ours, Kane Corns. Let's just jump straight into what has been, like I said at the top, a roller coaster 24 hours for North. Um, Over the past few weeks, the heat has been turned up on North Melbourne in the media, and I do think a lot of it is warranted. And I do think that the on-field performances over the past few weeks are inexcusable for North, and I do think that a lot of criticism has come the club's way, and rightly so, because the performances of late have been lackluster, they've been uninspiring, and we just look like we've taken 10 steps back in the last 3 weeks. Supporters have been left really frustrated. But Kane Corns, and we all know Kane, he's very, very strong in his opinions and in his delivery, has potentially taken it a step too far with the treatment of Harry Sheezel. He's only in his third year, and I know that Harry is so well spoken, and I think a lot of us really see him as a really strong leader of the club already at this point in his career. But at the end of the day, he is only in his early 20s, and I do think that the commentary from Kane directed at Harry Sheezel, in particular his Sheezy Ball segment that was launched on the Agenda Setters on Channel 7 earlier in the week, maybe crossed the line. The club certainly thinks that he's crossed a line, and they have come out. Todd Viney came out today in a press conference and said that after 2.5 years of relentless bullying, they have blacklisted Kane Corns from any access to the club. What did you think when you heard the news? We've obviously spoken about the Sheezy Ball thing, the two of us, during the week. And what do you think of North's decision to ban Kane Corns from the club?
It's an interesting one because we don't see this happen a lot. I applaud Todd Viney and the North Melbourne Footy Club. They are supporting their young player. I love Harry. Last year, Sheezel and Sherry were my two favourites, and I believe they were robbed for All Australian. So we'll just put that to a side. I do have a soft spot for Harry. Kane is a friend of mine. I've known Kane for a few years. We speak quite a lot. But I agree with your comments. I think he did cross the line, especially on Monday night or Monday or Tuesday night. I think the subject matter's fair, as you touched on. I do think North Melbourne have deserved the criticism that has come their way this season. But there's a way to deal with it and there's a way to deliver it. And I do think Kane definitely crossed the line with his segment. I do think behind the scenes, and I know a lot of North Melbourne supporters probably think the same, it relates a lot back to the Jason Horne-Francis situation as well. Horne-Francis, we know what happened with him at North Melbourne. I have a differing opinion to a lot of North Melbourne supporters. Like, I get the angst amongst them, mummy's boy wanting to go home. I think he made the right decision. It's unfortunate for North Melbourne. I get it. He's a young kid. Unfortunately, these things happen. We often see players from other clubs, change clubs, homesickness. It hurts North Melbourne supporters because the fact of the matter is Jason Horne-Francis is going to be a top 10 AFL player for the next decade. He's already a superstar. So I get it. He made his decision. You need to move on. But I do think Kane underneath, he pushes the lines because of that and he feeds off that. And I don't agree with the way he does that. Onto the Sheezel stuff, like I said, criticism's fair. I think Harry has underperformed this season. He's still getting, it's probably averaging over 20, I think it's 27 and a half possessions a game, which is great. But I think he has been down on the way he's played compared to last season. In saying that, he's played 51 games. He's 20 years old. He's going to be a future superstar of the AFL. He'll be the next captain of North Melbourne. I just think we often in the media, we're in the media, I guess, we often forget that these are still kids. They need time. And I agree with the comments on bullying. It probably was borderline bullying. My issue is I think North Melbourne maybe could have handled it a little differently instead of playing it out a lot in the media the way they did today. Maybe they could have got Kane Corns into the club to sit with Harry, to sit with the leaders of the club, and they could have had a face-to-face discussion. But again, in saying that, Todd's vocal in saying that this has been going on for 2 years. So maybe Kane's been invited down to the club. Maybe he's spoken to the players and the club have warned him over the last couple of years, maybe. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think Kane's done a video and spoken about it, and hasn't doubled down, but I don't think I've heard an apology yet. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the other issue North Melbourne are going to have, and I know the way the media works, is at the moment, North Melbourne's not a prime time, club. We saw they got their Good Friday game against Carlton, which was a disaster a few weeks ago. But Channel 7 go to the AFL and they ask them, they like to say, we want this club fixtured on this night as a feature game, or, is it Saturday night or Friday night or Thursday night footy? It might come back to bite North Melbourne in the bum when North Melbourne are starting to be more of an attractive, team to watch. I'm hoping North in the next 5 or 6 weeks can show that, because the fixture for the back half of the season is going to come out soon. Yeah. I think with this going on, Channel 7 might just turn around to North Melbourne and say, like Kane's one of ours. He does Thursday night footy. We'd rather, not have North Melbourne play on Thursday night if you're not going to allow access to Kane Corns in our team. Because I think Luke Hodgie and Kane were meant to do an interview with Clarko, a pre-recorded interview with Clarko before the game tomorrow night, and the club have said no. So it doesn't only affect Kane Corns, and I get that, but, Luke Hodge is part of the Channel 7 team, and that's going to affect their pre-game broadcast. But in saying that, I think, it's good on North Melbourne for sticking up for their player.
Yeah, I think, and we'll move on from this in a sec, but there's two ways you can look at it. I do agree. I do think that this particular instance with Kane Corns versus Harry Sheezel probably was taken a step too far. I don't know if I agree with the handling of the situation as a whole and going as far as blacklisting him. Now, obviously, we don't know what's happened behind the scenes over the past 2 to 2.5 years to get us to this point. But I sit here as a fan and I want the club to perform. I want the club to start lifting on field. And I think I speak for majority of North fans. We all want the same thing. And for so long, our poor form was just neglected because we were irrelevant and no one cared about North. We're now at a point where North are coming under the spotlight. They are coming under scrutiny from the external media, and that is actually to our benefit. Now, in this particular situation, I know is detrimental to a young player and a young leader at our club, but overall, the more we're spoken about, the more there is a spotlight on the issues, and then hopefully it draws attention for the club to fix it. I just don't want the club to become insular and start locking people out and becoming harder and harder to access, because then people are going to lose interest in the club and are going to lose connection with the club. For a club that is smaller and that doesn't have the same attention or spotlight as the bigger clubs in Melbourne, it's obviously a very, very saturated market. So I just hope that this doesn't hurt our chances, like you say, the relationship with Channel 7 as a whole, or with an SEN where Kane's also linked, or News where he's also linked. I just hope that we can find a way to navigate through this while still keeping our doors somewhat open and somewhat welcoming, to still be able to generate story and interest out of the club moving forward. But it is what it is. The club's made their decision and we'll park it there, because we do have a game of football to talk about. And all these storylines from today are actually just creating more interest in a game that 3 days ago was being labelled a snooze fest and being labelled something that no one really cared about. Let's talk about Finnbar Maley. Let's touch on him first. The good news
The
story
Moose.
out of Thursday night's game. He will make his long-awaited AFL debut tomorrow night. It's likely that he will replace Paul Curtis. We're filming this before the teams drop. What do you think of the big moose?
I love the video on the website of his announcement. Clarko, to his credit, is brilliant with that type of stuff. Debuts and speaking and speeches. You often see the behind-the-scenes stuff of Clarko at the club, and I witnessed it firsthand at the Hawks. He's brilliant with that, and you could see how happy his teammates were. I've seen a little bit of him in the VFL. He can take a contested mark, which is good. You know, he's big and strong. So he's a mature body. Hopefully he doesn't start as the sub. I don't think he's the type of player who you'd start as the sub. So he'll probably start in the 22. I really dislike what that we've seen a lot this season is players named as they for their debuts. Their families travel from all over the country and they start as the sub and they come on and play 10 minutes in the last quarter. That sub rule is an absolute joke. It's got to go. Hopefully next season it's either 5 on the bench with no sub, or we have 4 on the bench and no sub. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But for Finnbar, it's great. You know, for a club like North Melbourne, you know, who unfortunately, you know, you struggled in recent weeks, much better against Port Adelaide. You really could have won that game last week. It's a hard one. You know, do you look glass half full or glass half empty of last week? I think it's glass half full, especially after the previous couple of weeks. And, you know, I know my team went over to Adelaide and got absolutely belted by Port Adelaide. So positive signs for North, but hopefully this is something that can give North a lift. Unfortunately, the Warlord is out, which is disappointing. I actually think North would have been a chance if he played. I think he's been absolutely brilliant since he came in after his pre-season injuries. He's probably been your best midfielder. Essendon's midfield is not A grade, but they've got big bodies in there. Setterfield's coming in, he's really strong. Durham's a big, strong body midfield. Zach Merritt's been playing a bit more forward, but goes in. They rotate some guys through there, but they're bigger bodies. Unfortunately, without George, who I think's your best in and under midfield, I think you're going to struggle. I think Harry's been playing across half back and not in the midfield. Jai Simkin, I know I messaged you last week during the game. He's been really disappointing, the captain. I'm not sure what's going on with him. He started the season really well, and I think he's a quality player. Plays as a half forward that goes into the midfield. He's probably better as a midfielder than a forward, but there's no spot for him. Yeah. So Tom Powell's the other one who's been down on form, who really needs a big game, especially with George out. So Parker, probably other than Wardlaw, has been your best midfielder in recent weeks, which is good in a way, similar to the way Hawthorn are with Gunston at the moment. Jack Gunston's top 5 in the Coleman medal. He's kicked 13 goals in the last 3 weeks, which is ridiculous. But saying that, you don't want those guys as your best players. They are in there as leaders and to be your role players, like Jack Darling's been doing. I think Darling's copped a lot of unfair criticism from a few. I think he's been fantastic for North Melbourne. His leadership, he plays the ruck occasionally. He's kicked a few goals. I think he's been brilliant for North. So, yeah, for North Melbourne to win this game, you're going to have to somehow in the midfield. Sherry, I think, will be able to beat Goldstein around the ground, but Goldstein's still a quality tap ruckman. Yeah, he was able to hold his own against Darcy Cameron on Anzac Day, and obviously is a former shin boner, a legend of your club. You know, one of the best ruckman that North Melbourne's had. So hopefully he gets cheers and not boos from North Melbourne supporters. I'm sure they'll cheer Goldie. But yeah, for you guys to win this game, and with Curtis out, I think Curtis probably for me, with Jack Higgins, was probably the All-Australian small forward in the first 7 weeks of the season. Yeah. So, you know, who kicks his 3 goals this week is a big question. I just think to beat Essendon, you're probably going to have to kick 14 or 15 goals. So I don't know if that's going to be possible.
I think it's really interesting what you've mentioned, and provided that A, Jack Darling plays, and B, Finnbar Maley is not the sub and starts, it's the first time this season we've gone in with a 3-prong forward line. I really like that because I think it allows Finnbar to play that second ruck, third tall forward role, and it allows Jack Darling to stay in the forward line and then just push up the ground and be an option for a mark further afield if needed. Jack Darling is so crucial to that forward structure, and with the absence of Paul Curtis, as you mentioned, Jack Darling's kicked 7 goals so far this year. So I think he's only been goalless in 1, if not 2 games, and I think that if he actually is able to just stay in the forward line and be there for 90% of the time, quite a few people are floating around and feeding into my delusion really well, saying that this could be a Jack Darling 4 or 5 goal game. You will not see a happier person at Marvel Stadium tomorrow night if that is the case than I. I also think that there's a lot of pressure now on Cam Zurhaar, but I think the next 3 weeks for Cam Zurhaar is crucial for his career. Paul Curtis has just surpassed him this year. Bull has taken a little bit of time to warm up. He was really good in the second half of the game against Port Adelaide last week. If he can really step up now and deliver 3 goals, 3 goals, have some time in the midfield and be that real physical presence we know he can, then I think we could be okay covered. In terms of the midfield, I think Will Phillips has a chance to come back in and replace George Wardlaw. We've been screaming out for him to come back into the side. He's averaged 10 tackles over the past few weeks, a game in the VFL and 20 odd touches, I believe, as well. It's time to bring him back. He could get the tagging role on merit. We saw that Darcy Tucker was trialled as the tagger against Rosie and just failed miserably. I'll be horrified if Darcy Tucker plays on the weekend, just because I don't think you can play someone on the back of getting no touches at all and being comprehensively beaten by your opponent. So we'll wait and see when the teams come out very shortly. But I think that Will Phillips has an opportunity there. Maybe he takes Merritt. I still think Merritt's so underrated, despite the fact that he does play for Essendon and is one of the best midfielders in the competition. I still don't think we give him credit for how good he is. Sam Durham was excellent against Essendon. It was probably the Bombers' best on Anzac Day, against Collingwood. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we match up. I wonder how we go down back as well. We obviously opted to go for the 2 tall defenders instead of 3 last weekend against Port Adelaide. A very different looking forward line for Essendon. They've got 3 very tall, very prominent forwards. So I'm interested to see how we line up with them, especially because we like to play Charlie as more of a loose, floating, intercepting defender. So there's lots of questions surrounding this side, and I guess it's going to be a wait and see. What do you think is going to happen at Marvel Stadium tomorrow night, Brad? Give me a quick tip before we let you go.
My heart says North Melbourne. I'd love you guys to beat the Bombers. I just think on Marvel, faster surface. I think Essendon actually play Marvel better than they do the MCG. I think the Bombers will probably win by 3 or 4 goals. But I'm hoping that North Melbourne, for you and North Melbourne supporters, you guys are due for a win after last week. If you play the way you did against Port Adelaide last week, you're probably going to win this game. But again, I just think, Paul, Curtis, and Wardlaw are probably 2 of your best 4 players, at the moment. When you're a team like North Melbourne who doesn't have the quality and depth that the other teams have, if you lose 2 of your best 4 or 5 players, you're going to struggle. It doesn't matter who you play against. So I think the losses of those 2 are really going to hurt you. But in saying that, we've seen crazier things happen. Like I said, Sherry dominates in the ruck. LDU, I think, is probably going to cop Sam Durham. Durham plays run with type of role. Setterfields are the other one who can play as a tagger. So LDU is going to cop big attention, especially without George there. So it's going to be up to, like we mentioned before, your Tom Powells and Simpkin when he goes in the midfield, and Parker. They're really going to have to play well for you guys to win in the midfield and get the ball forward to kick a winning score, because the Bombers' back line has improved. Obviously, Ben Mackay, as their fullback, will obviously play on Larky. Zach Reed's a quality young player, top 10 draft pick who's had his injury problems, but he's been really good for the Bombers. Andy McGrath's become a really strong lockdown defender, so he'll probably play on Zerha without Paul Curtis there. So that's going to be a tough one for Zerha. But like I said, for you guys to win, you're probably going to have to kick between 13 and 15 goals. And I don't think you're going to be able to kick that many goals.
Well, I guess it's just a wait and see. Hopefully, the heart tip is right there. Brad, thank you so much for joining me. For those who are watching, Brad Klibansky on X and the Shane and Buddy show across YouTube, all your good podcasting apps, and all across socials. Brad, thank you so much for joining me back on the channel. I have no doubt we'll see you very, very soon.
Thanks, Mans. Go Roos.
Another very, very big thank you to Brad, big friend of Kanga TV. He's been on the channel before and he will be back, no doubt. Make sure you catch him on the Hawks Insiders and the Shane and Buddy show across all of your favourite podcasting platforms. There's not too much I want to add on the back of the chat that he and I had debriefing today's news. I guess the only thing I really wanted to quickly touch on was the club's decision to not challenge the Paul Curtis suspension. Obviously, Paul Curtis, his 3-match ban was upheld at the tribunal on Tuesday night. The tackle on Josh Sin resulting in concussion. I do wish Josh Sin all the very best and a full and speedy recovery. The decision by the club to not challenge the suspension was announced on Wednesday morning, and to a lot of the fans' disappointment and the AFL world's disappointment as a whole, I don't agree with the decision to not challenge the ban, even if the AFL has come out, and Todd Viney has said this in a press conference on Wednesday morning, the reason they didn't challenge is because they were told don't bother, there's a 0 chance he's getting off. And you know what, I don't really care if that's the case. It's not really about the outcome of the tribunal and the challenge, it's more just about us and our response. And I don't like that it appears from the outside that we've been so willing to just lay down and roll over just on the back of what the AFL has said. I think we've really needed to defend Paul Curtis. I think we need to stand up for ourselves. We had the entire AFL world backing us on this one here. And I just think it's disappointing. I think it just sends a message to the fans that maybe not weak, maybe isn't the right word, but maybe it is. Just that we just don't back ourselves in to try and get off, and just to try and show a little bit of a fight and a little bit of resilience. It kind of feels like it's in the too hard basket, so let's just move on. I understand the time restraints with the game on tonight, and it was only a 48-hour turnaround from the decision to appeal to game time, but it's not a 1-week suspension we're talking about here. It's a 3-week suspension, and 2 of those games this weekend against Essendon and then a couple of weeks' time against Richmond probably look like winnable games from this point, and Paul Curtis has been one of our best performers all year round, and I do back in the team that we've got, that it's not just one player that's going to make or break, but for a side that has been struggling for so long and does lack star and firepower up forward, he has been someone who has been able to contribute over 7 games equally. He's one of 2 multiple goal scorers in every single game up until this point. So it's going to be a massive loss for us. But like I said, I do back our troops in this weekend, or I should say this Thursday night, tonight against Essendon. I do back the cattle that we do have in there. Obviously, the added excitement of Finnbar Maley having a third tall forward in the mix definitely changes things up forward. We also welcome back Will Phillips and Bailey Scott to the side, making way for them. Obviously, we mentioned a suspended Paul Curtis, an injured George Wardlaw, and Darcy Tucker off a 0 possession game has been dropped. I really feel for Darcy Tucker. Look, I've thought that he's been solid in his role up until last week, but there's just no way you can hold your spot on the back of a 0 possession game, and we have found that to be true, so he will make way as well. The backline does concern me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Griffin Logue and Aidan Core will not play. They are both set to return through the VFL and prove themselves. We play Essendon VFL on Friday afternoon. Just given the potent 3 tall forwards in Essendon's forward line, I wonder how we're going to match up, and I worry that the one who is left exposed is just going to have a field day. It really heavily relies on pressure coming up the ground, and are we at that point where we can rely on that yet? Maybe, based on what we saw against Port Adelaide, but I still think it's too early to tell. In my mind, there's been less games and we've shown pressure all across the ground, and there's been games we've just let clubs walk all over us. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting contest at Marvel Stadium tonight. I do think that the backline did look the best that it had looked all season. On Saturday afternoon in Adelaide, our backline did match up well against Port Adelaide. We did keep them to under 100 points. It's the first time this season we've kept an opposition to under 100 points, but the firepower, especially the key position players for Essendon up forward, it's a stark contrast to what we had against Port Adelaide last week. They're coming in with 3 tall forwards, each of whom have had a significant impact on this Essendon side at some point throughout the year, versus Callan Dawson and Charlie Comben. I absolutely back them in, and I just hope that they can get the job done. But at this stage, I'm just not sure if our team defense is good enough to stop them. And I don't know if those 2 alone are going to be enough to stop the flood and the flow into Essendon's forward 50. But I guess that is just a time will tell sort of thing. I'm very, very excited to have Wilfield back in this side. If Darcy Tucker wasn't able to stop Connor Rosie last week, then I think Will Phillips should get the job on Zach Merritt, potentially have a run with Merritt. I think Merritt is such an underrated player still. He is one of the best players in the competition, and I really think that having that defensive element of Will Phillips in the midfield mix is absolutely going to be to our benefit. And I just hope that this is the first of a string of games for Will Phillips. Like I said, I think that we are really missing some defensive blueprint, especially higher ground, and who better to bring in than Will Phil. Bailey Scott also returns. I think it's going to be interesting to see who is the sub. Dersma could be the sub once again. I think at the moment. That looks to me to be the decision we would go with. I wouldn't have Will Phillips as a sub. I'd either have Bailey Scott, who I don't know if he's able to change a game or not, or Zane Dersma, or potentially Dylan Stevens, who has actually been pretty solid in the side, but also has been excellent as the sub. So maybe that's the move they aim to make. So many questions and so many possibilities lay ahead of us tonight. Like I said, Marvel Stadium, 7:30, we take on the Bombers. How do you think this game will go? And more importantly, how are you guys feeling? Just doing a general mental health well-being check on the back of what has been a huge few days at Arden Street. Leave all of your thoughts, feelings, and comments down below. We can catch up on socials as well. Kanga TV Show on Instagram, X, Facebook, and email as well if you are that way inclined. I look forward to seeing you all at Marvel Stadium tonight. Go Roos, have the best time, and hopefully we're back here on Friday celebrating a historic North Melbourne victory. Go Roos.